I have with me today Richard Mahapatra from Down to Earth and Jayantu Basu from The Telegraph. Thank you so much for joining, both of you. Richard, let's start with you. It'll be great if you can start with the parliamentary constituency profile.
Thank you, Sukanya. And we are nearly, I think, will be through with the third phase. And more than half of the parliamentary constituencies by the evening would have voted already. But let's look at, Indian elections are the largest, that's why we call the largest democracy. But look at the size of the voters. So this year we have 97 crore or 970 million eligible voters. And unlike the sex ratio in the country, the voters are actually gender neutral. We have nearly equal number of men and women as voters. So this is one way you call the vote. This election is also gender neutral. And if coming to the 543 parliamentary constituencies, these elections, each constituency actually, whoever is elected as a member of parliament will be representing the largest number of people ever in India's electoral history. Each member of parliament will represent some around 18 lakhs voters, nearly. And if you compare it, say in 1952, the first general elections, it was just below 2 lakh and 2 lakh voters. So one way, this each member it also comes with the largest, you can say that's bouquet of aspirations and expectations to steer. So out of this, who are these voters? If you just segregate them, as we know, means we have around 423 seats, that general seats we call it, 423. 79 seats are reserved for the scheduled caste groups, and 41 are for the scheduled tribes group. But what is the profile of it? Just to put it in such a way that every second voter in the country is a farmer or is involved in farming this time. And if you look at it, every 8 voter, going by the populations and the eligible voters, will be a forest dweller. And another thing, if you look at now, consider in which context that we are voting at the currently. We all talk about the heat wave sweeping, and probably it's bringing down the turnout also. But most of these parliamentary constituencies in the last 2 years have experienced at least 3 extreme weather events, going by the Center for Science and Environment and down to our, extreme weather tracker. So you can call them, they are also one way the victims of this changed climate. They are also the farmers who directly interface, most of them, half of them are farmers who directly interface with the climate things. And as we know, farmers of late have been more on the roads and the street protesting than in farms. So this basically gives you, and we don't know anything about the exact, state of poverty and development scenarios in the country, because we don't have the data for that for more than a decade. But going by the old data also, chances are there that every 5th voter is officially poor, based on a poverty line that was drawn more than a decade ago. So this is the context. And if you come to the rural and urban, hardly 60 parliamentary constituencies are predominantly urban, rest are rural. So that, Sukanya, basically it gives you the, a bit profile of the parliamentary constituencies, which together make us the largest democracy. Sukanya, I think
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jaintu, let me loop you in now. You have been covering elections for many years now. Have you observed that the environmental concerns being talked about in elections, or rather, do they have a defining impact on the results? Would you say?
I would say no and yes. No in general term, and yes in segmental terms. Yes, I've been closely following the election process from early 2000, 2009, and then all those things. Yes, the discussion about the discourse about environment in the election context has grown, but that growth has not reflected in the ground level per se. And but as I said, there are exceptions. I'm giving you a couple of examples. Before 2021 assembly election in West Bengal, I was covering a very remote place, Bankura district, very remote part of Bankura as well, in the rural area. And I met a few women out there who were talking about rainwater harvesting. I was completely kind of pushed off what they're talking about rainwater harvesting and all these things. And then when I sat with them and discussed it, then I understood it's actually the environment being linked to the development and livelihood that pushed them and propelled them to consider the environmental issues as a part of larger discourse. And that is also that's also influenced the election. What was happening? The government of West Bengal was supporting through some local NGOs some rainwater harvesting, and that rainwater harvesting was completely changing the profile of that area. And I still remember a line told by a tribal woman to me that I purchased, see the language, I purchased a phone, a chabiwala phone, a phone that can take pictures for my husband. So that to me is a defining sentence. A tribal woman saying she has purchased something for her husband, and that too a chabiwala phone that's completely changed the profile. So I understood. I was same in the Sundarbans. In the Sundarbans, when people have started talking about how the embankment is giving away due to the repeated climate disaster, it started after Ayla. It actually got to a level after Amphan. So I say that in areas where the environment could be linked with the development of the livelihood, they came up as an election agenda, might be influencing a result to an extent, but where they are not, in generally they are not, it's not really happening like that. So unless the environmental concerns can be linked with the development in a proper way, I think it's difficult for it to make a real impact on the election result discourse.
My second question is for both of you. Do you think that climate change and environmental issues should be an election issue? One of Jaintu, you can start while you're anyway.
Richard would like to start?
No, you start, Jayanta. I think you are reporting from the most climate
Okay.
world.
See, this is something we all been talking about. Down to it actually has carried a series, and we're all been reporting and all that. This is the cruelest April on record. I was looking at the IMD data a couple of days back. It was showing for Eastern Northeast India. It was the cruelest April since 1901. In 124 years, we didn't have an April like this. And we are going to have an election during that time. So that's another part. Is it how democracy operates? That's a different discourse. But yes, climate is the major issue. But unfortunately, that issue, like the overall environmental issues, really hasn't made that much mark anywhere, unless that again becomes something related to the livelihood issues and other things. So I would say that to your question that yes, it's as an issue, it didn't really make the mark it should have been. But there's another part of it, the interesting part of it. Climate change has worked as an issue by default. How it happened? Because of this high heat during the first two phases of election, the overall voting percentage has gone down by around 3 to 4%. And that is not homogeneous across the country. You will find that areas like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar suffering more, the voting percentage is less, but the areas like Manipur and other areas is reasonable. So many feel that that will have a kind of a bearing on the result. We don't know which party is going to profit from it or not. That's a different discourse. But overall, it can influence the result, because in our democracy, in a close fight, 1.5% is huge. So there 3% or 4% difference, or in states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, even more than that. that can be an impact. So climate change, you can keep away climate change from your manifestos, from your lectures, but you can't keep climate change away from the election impact.
Richard?
Yeah, in fact, it's quite interesting. I'll also just go back a little back into the past. You know, in 1999, Odisha get to the wall that term called, disaster called super cyclone. And I remember the election that followed, the government was thrown out. And since then, there is a party in power, has been for 25 years. And he is, Navin Patnaik of Odisha. And we do see actually during elections, and Navin Patnaik has been spoken for his disaster management and how he has made that state, disaster resilient. Those are being spoken definitely. Even if you look at this, Prime Minister Modi actually has spoken about climate change more than anybody else, whether it's national, and he assumes a leadership of the global south on the climate change justice and the fight. But somehow strange. Climate change is not just a change in the climate. As I mentioned, every parliamentary constituency is having three disasters. In the last 5 years, India losing crops in over more than 500,000, around 5 million hectares of land. Crops are being damaged by these things, and there is a deep agrarian crisis out of that, whether it's heat wave or erratic weather events. And as you know, majority of people depend on agriculture, but it's still somehow the climate issue has not been. That reminds what Jayanta just said, that the connect. Whether we don't get to connect that climate change issue to our livelihoods, that's why it doesn't become a mainstream issue. And that could be the reason also it's not articulated as something as an electoral issue. Is that right, Jayanta? Or do you feel that also, even agrarian issues or the weather issues also don't feature in the manifestos of political parties or in their even campaigns? Is it so even during this elections also? We have already seen 3 phases.
Absolutely. In fact, before Shukanna comes here, I just would like to add one thing, as because Richard just mentioned. First of all, I was looking at a report being released by some Climate Central and Climate Trend and all, arguing that this should be the last election during summer. This should be the last election during summer, because we are all seeing the reports that how the weather is going to be warming up further, how the temperature will shoot up further. So should we make our as Richard said, the constituency profile, that about 97 crore voter going through this. On one side, IMD is saying, don't go out of your house unless it's extreme emergency. On the other side, political people are asking them to come out and vote. And even the election commission is asking them to come out and vote. So it's a bit of a contradiction. So it's very interesting. And also, I feel I was covering the COP28 and just mentioned that India was projecting itself, but rightfully so, as a leader of Global South. But that leadership doesn't come just by speaking in the global platform. You have to bring that home in the domestic forum and make sure that your leadership is percolates down there. So somewhere down the line, that's not happening as of
now. Sukanya, can I just make a point? One of the fascinating elections in recent time, we had a surprise. Is the 2004 elections. That's where Mr. Bajpayee, leading the Bharatiya Janata Party government, was thrown out in a very surprise verdict. And the opposition came to power, that Congress-led alliance. What was the context in that elections? It was also turning out to be a, very stale elections, and the heat was also, it's comparable to this point of times. But in the context was playing the deep agrarian crisis. That's actually period India reported the maximum number of farmer suicides the many disasters happened during that time that impacted agricultures. And yes, it's true. These things were never spoken about or never used as electoral issues, nor any actually political parties sought a vote on this. But it was playing out. So, Joyanta, do you think that's the kind of way that these issues will actually appear in elections? Particularly these elections where we started very stale way almost. It seems that all are saying that there is no any visible popular, agenda or anything else. I think you can say that it's not only gender neutral, it is also some emotion neutral elections also.
All right. Talking about electoral issues, I'll move on to the next question. We have to bring in the whole issue of migration. Richard, as you know, India has a huge population of migrants. And how do you think will be them giving the voting rights? And Down to Earth, as you know, has been tracking the migrants for over so many years. And there are thousands of people who have not been voting, even though they are the target population of the political parties. How do you think we will work around it?
Sukanya, that's actually this time it's being spoken about, as you pointed out, Down to Earth carried a series under which Joyanta wrote very powerfully about the issue of migrants. In India, as if you look at it, at an average, 28% of people migrate in India for work. And what our reports show that most of them will be missing voting. And it's not just, it's across India. And we don't have a system, it's my duty to vote. I take a decision to vote, but there are also situations that you are not able to vote. So that's one part of the other part is that these people not being able to vote are also one way not able to actually raise their issues. Who are these migrants? And we can just go back to what we just spoke about the constituency profiles. Every second person is a farmer, 3 disasters, a parliamentary constituency in 2 years, and huge farm loss. Most of these informal workers are basically distressed migrants also, who have been displaced from agricultures. So that could be. So that my question to Jayanta is that because you reported, do you think this kind of disappearance of the victim voters are actually leading to this kind of issues not getting highlighted also?
See, Richard and also Shukanna, I think this migrant issue, I think, is one of the, I would say, if you analyze the Indian democracy vis-a-vis the electoral system, and if we look at the highs and the lows, and the way we are treating the migrant voting is, I think, one of the lows. A country which is having close to 35 or 37% migrant population working outside, you don't have a system. You are a country which is one of the global topper in terms of technology to build up. Why can't you build up a system where these migrant people can vote from wherever their destinations are? I can talk from the West Bengal perspective. West Bengal officially, they have just completed a survey which saying that West Bengal is about having 2.2 million out-state migrants. The actual figure may be much higher. In fact, Prime Minister Modi, around 2021 election, told in a public meeting it is about 4 million. So let's take about 2 to 4 million, whatever the figures are. And those people, many of them are coming back. And there's also a trend in that. They are coming back, if you look at a scale, they are coming back most during the panchayat election, because they feel that they need to engage and embrace themselves with the panchayat election, or their families who are staying back get all the advantage they are supposed to get. In assembly and parliament, not that great. This year it's more because the Eid kind of overlapped with, so a lot of Muslim population came back during the Eid and stayed back to vote. But look at the implication. If you look at 2019 election, as we know that Trinamool Congress and BJP are the main 2 parties out here in West Bengal. And if you look at the gross vote difference, it was about 1.6 million. So 16 lakhs vote, gross number, separated Trinamool and BJP. And also the results were quite close. When we went to the 2021 election, the difference was 6 million, 60 lakhs. And Trinamool swept the election. And talking to the politicians, it seemed that this bringing back migrants, especially in the border districts and all, did wonderful for Trinamool. So quite clearly, the migrant population has a major impact on the electoral processes around the country in general and West Bengal in particular. But I strongly vouch that we should set up a system where this migrant population, because party funding for some of the migrant leader people to come back and vote, who can mobilize others. But parties are not funding everybody to come back. So these poor people have to come back for various reasons and vote. They all want to vote. They should vote. So I think with all the technologies and everything at our disposal now, there should be a process by the Electoral Commission to ensure that all migrant people can vote from their destination, whatever way, to whom they want to, in a proper manner. So that's, I think, it's borderline and extremely important. And that's one of the weaknesses of our democratic processes of not allowing the migrant to vote the way they should vote.
In fact,
also I take this opportunity to publicly congratulate Richard and Down to Earth, the way they have handled this migrant issue during the COVID period. Phenomenal. We all learned from it. And I also did a couple of copies where I saw how this migrant people, not only in election, they have been tossed around like a badminton court. Even from a state like Kerala, which is known as one of the kind of topper in terms of handling these migrant people, they were asked to go away within 24 hours and had to change 4 or 5 times trains, water and whatever to come back in Sundarbans. It's criminal how we treat our migrant population.
Can I just add on, I think, Jayanto, what you pointed out, this relevance of the panchayat elections to people. Because we all know that panchayat, now panchayat implement nearly 80% of the rural development programs. They are the widest and the biggest implementing agency for development works. And that also makes sense for them. And I have seen in the Western Odisha part, then in Chhattisgarh, we see more people actually, the informal migrant workers coming back to their villages during panchayat elections. And as you pointed out, in many cases, actually, politicians themselves bring them also for voting. And in 2 elections, I remember asking this, what you pointed out, that why people might not be interested in a assembly elections or in a parliamentary elections. Many of them reply that this is where our concerns are being addressed. So the relevance of which government, this is the 3rd tier government, in the 3 tier, if you look at the parliament, then the state, and there's the panchayat. The panchayat or the local government seems to be the most critical government. They want to participate because they have the interest. People have the interest and their local needs, all this way. And rather, in local elections, if you look at it, the welfare of migrants, workers, how they can be streamlined, how they can be facilitated, their education of their children, those things have emerged as big issue and has resulted in big electoral issues later point where, like, say that Telangana, Andhra Pradesh and Odisha have agreement on the welfare of the migrant workers, that even the children can continue their study while they migrate out also in other states. So that could be, I think, so that's what I was pointing, how such local issues, but a big issue because a large chunk of people are migrating and from their things. If they don't participate, or if you don't make them participate in the elections, their issues might be just disappearing from conversations and policy making.
My next question to both of you, and I'll request you both to keep it short because we have one more question to go. How are manifestos treating environmental issues? Do you think that they have lost their significance over time? I would like both of you to answer this.
I asked Jayanto to do that. He is the very serious reader of all manifestos for many years. He analyzes those.
I think I'll be short, but I was looking at the manifestos of all the major political parties, and there's an interesting similarity in that. You'll find for both BJP and Congress, and as well as for Trinamool Congress in West Bengal, which is basically a West Bengal party, though it has a dream of being a national party, but it's predominantly a West Bengal party. Environment comes at the last. So I would say when you are talking about the manifestos, look at three things: posturing, positioning, quality, and quantity of content. So not only say we are saying, oh, nothing in environment. So no point in having, so many of these political parties are having 1 or 2 or 3 pages. So they have some space. But it's just like, I'm sorry to say, it's like more about the high school students writing an essay about environment rather than a political and policy discourse. And also, a very interesting study being made by Professor Sabir Ahmed, who is the Calcutta-based worker working with Amartya Sen Pratik Institute, that the term environment has been used 10 times or 11 times or 12 times in various manifestos. So to me, the positioning of environment at the very fag end of the whole manifesto, the quantity part more than the quality part. And I'm also, I didn't see anything about the rural environment. Down to Earth has reported, CSE has done studies showing how in rural areas people are affected by the impact of climate change, impact of air pollution, maybe as big as the urban areas. But do you see any reflection on that? Do you see much reflection on groundwater? Do you see much reflection on river? There are some general commitments, but no specific policy discourses are there. So it's just like generally that there's a lot of criticism about environment not being considered. So let's put 2 or 3 pages. It's just like that. To me, more important what is not there rather than what is there. For example, in BJP's manifesto this year, I couldn't find the river linking, which was a much debated discourse in the earlier manifestos. That's important. And other manifestos, there is something about the environmental impact assessment and everything. So overall, to me, yes, manifestos, if you look at the quantitative term, has increased on environmental issues. But when you link it with the qualitative part, it's not there. For example, I wind up with one particular point. See, climate change. Climate change, we are having a international commitment of 2070 net zero. Now, where is the reflection of our international commitment to the election? And you can't do that. See, environment, climate change are all in the constitutional pointer where both state and center has to work together. Where is the structure nationally to work on this net zero across the states? And nothing being written on that in the manifestos. So manifestos, I don't think the political people give much seriousness on that. You just have to write something. The media and the activists, they talk about it, the issues of environment in manifestos. So they give some space. I can show you one particular thing. This is a document being prepared by West Bengal-based environmental platform called Shobuj Moncho, the Green Platform. They identified 15 issues, the key issues of the country right now, which are hardly being reflected in the discourse by the most political parties. So quite clearly, that's where we stand.
All right. Richard, do you have any comments or shall I move to the next question?
Yeah, I think he's right that in fact parties don't bother to also bring out their manifestos on time, and also they themselves are not attaching much importance that we used to see it earlier. It used to be a big occasions of releasing your manifesto. So they still do that, but not much. Those have been, I think, replaced by this set of guarantees. But even if you look at those guarantees, 5, 7, 10, 25, many parties have 15, 25 also guaranteed. That reflects that elections are becoming very transactional. First of all, I guarantee you A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you vote me and kind of thing. And those are mostly what you call the certain welfare benefits. Even if you look at those guarantees also, I think those guarantees don't reflect even the environment issues per se. If you look at it, so it's, yes, you can say that I want to give you LPG gas, one cylinder at this price, you can say that that's a fight against, indoor pollution and all these things, but still it's not that. So from the guarantees also, the environmental commitments, like nobody's guaranteeing you that, okay, I'll give you good soil. I'll ensure you that I'll insure your crops from climate change related
Right.
disasters. We don't find that. Yes, there are schemes they are being talking about. So in those guarantees also we don't find. So new regime of guarantees where they are actually enticing the voters and selling their party, but we don't find that much.
And Richard, that guarantee is in Constitution. Guarantee for the air and clean air and fresh water is in Constitution. Nobody individual has to give it. It's in the Constitution. Only the political people have to implement it. That's the only way they are.
Yeah.
My final question to both of you is, you both have covered a lot on environmental hotspots. Do you feel that these issues have been featured in the current elections?
Can I start with the, Joyanta has written a lot. Many people are writing about. When we created a list of, the 50 environmental hotspots and to check out, do these areas actually have an electoral impact? At least in terms of, parties and candidates speaking about those environmental issues. Remember, these are hotspots, so environment has been an issue. Many of them are nationally known, hotspots where there have been earlier coverage and issues around these things. But we actually didn't find much. Those few that we could actually report, because that's one way you can say that from this list we can go that environmental crisis, environmental issues, though might be of critical importance, having big impact on people, big impacts also on the national programs and policies, but somehow campaigns, electoral campaigns and in politics, we don't find this, but might be in number of voters, they might not be that big enough to have an impact. Over to Jayan.
Absolutely, Richard. I can't agree more. I think, see, I restrict myself to West Bengal. Richard has spoken overall. See, in West Bengal, there was a major issue on Devcha Pachami coal mine. In fact, I wrote about it in Downward Descending. Now, this Devcha Pachami has been a major issue. It's an international issue because it is one of the biggest coal reserves in Asia and one of the biggest in globally as well. So there's a lot of talks going on about 1.5 years back. But this year, this election, nothing out there. So I went and covered and saw why it is not there. Because none of the main political parties is talking about. See, if you have to make an issue in that proportion being important to electional process and discourse, then some party has to start talking about. Now, here you find that both Trinamool, CPM, and as well as BJP, some individuals that might be talking, but as a party, are they taking it up the way they're taking up other issues? They are not. Take an example of Noyashot. Noyashot is, that's one of the major kind of area where when Trinamool Congress was there is a major issue, the left era. That became a big issue. Why? Because Trinamool took it up politically as an issue. So it's very important. It's very important for one political party or other to pick up an issue, and then only these hotspots become real hot in terms of electoral process. Unless it's very difficult. It's very difficult unless it's too big, like an air pollution in Delhi or like that. Otherwise, it's very difficult.
Joyita, I have a query. That's a before coming to Sukanya and this, polarization is a word that we all talk about. And currently also we are looking at either communal polarizations, caste polarizations, polarization per se, in elections. It does work. The polarization could be around any, axis. Why don't we have a polarization around environmental issues?
you have touched the raw nerve out here, Richard. Very important, and I think many of us are talking about it. Yes, we could not do the polarization the way it should have been done on environment. I'm not saying the rightfulness or the wrongfulness, but look how the religion being used in the political discourse. I understand, like religion, the environment is also primarily a personal issue. When there is air pollution around me, my lungs is affected. When due to the climate change, the environment giving away, my house is going to be devastated. If the water having arsenic pollution, my health is going to be affected. My family's health is going to be affected. So primarily it's an individual issue, which then goes up to a collective issue. Same with the kind of religion, other thing. But as because other issues are being pitchforked as a major issue, polarization happened around them. But in environment, till now, we could not do that. In fact, I see the other way around. I see a great consensus among all political parties for not working in favor of environment. I would say it's a great consortium of all political parties of not working in favor of environment, because if you talk to the individual political leaders individually, not in public platform where they give all those lectures, they still feel that environment is a deterrent to the development, quote unquote, what they feel is right. So they still do feel it in their mind. So because a party is a collective opinion of leaders, it's not something coming out of from nowhere. So as political party, there are exceptions. I do agree and accept that. But as a political party, most parties still feel that environment is going to deter whatever the political discourse or the developmental discourse they follow. So that's why Richard, there's no polarization, because they're all in the one pole. People like you and me on the other pole, but they're on the other pole. And they decide and kind of determine the discourse of the political discourse in this country. So, in fact, I give a small example. I went to Germany some time back and talked to the Green Party leaders out there, and I was told that Green Party has on a slide. So I was wondering what happened. The Green Party talked about environmental issues, why they went down. I met the leader of the Green Party, the lady hosted us, and she said a very interesting thing. She said, yes, we are on a decline, but you know why we're on a decline? Why? Because all political parties have picked up our agendas. So we don't have any exclusive environmental agenda. So I think that's a great thing to happen. So that's the way it is. The Green Party might have declined as a party, but they could cater and trigger the discourse among all political parties across Germany. Sadly, it's not happening here.
So basically, we need a Green Party in India to force the other parties to have this.
Perhaps.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you. It was a very enriching conversation, and we hope we'll get to see more of you in the future once the elections are done. All right. Thank you so much once again. Thank you for listening.
Looking forward. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jayanta.
Thank you, Shipana. Thank you, Richard. Privilege.